We start our journey in the city of Ronda, the birthplace of modern bullfighting, before moving northward over swathes of olive groves to the spectacular Moorish clifftop castle in Zahara. We'll explore one of the major metropolitan centres of the ancient world, Cordoba, and then move onward over more olive plantations via the hidden-away hamlet of Espejo, on the way to the fortress town of Montefrio. Spain is the world's largest producer of olives, and Andalusia is responsible for 80% of Spain's total production. So don't be surprised as we encounter even more plantations on the way to our final stop, Granada, where we'll get a close look at some of the architectural wonders of the ancient Islamic world. In the words of British travel writer Jan Morris, the image of Spain is the image of Andalusia. Indeed, the region's traditions of olive farming, bullfighting and flamenco have become the iconic representations of Spain. Situated on the far south of the country, the landscape and identity here have been shaped by over 1,000 years of invasion, religious conflict, empires vying for power, and the synthesis of myriad cultures, both ancient and modern. And perhaps no settlement better embodies the cultural and historical eclecticism of Andalusia than the small city of Ronda. Archaeologists believe people were settled in the area as far back as the Neolithic Age, 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. But since then, the town has been occupied by Celts, Phoenicians, the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, and the Visigoths. It was taken by Arab invaders around 700 AD and ruled by Islamic leaders for 800 years until the city fell into Catholic hands. It was one of the most severely affected areas during the Spanish Inquisition, resulting in the execution, exile or enslavement of thousands of Muslims and Jews. Two centuries ago, Napoleonic France decimated Ronda's population in the Peninsular War, and the city then became a bloody battleground in the Spanish Civil War of the 1930s. In fact, in one of the more chillingly gruesome scenes in Ernest Hemingway's For Whom the Bell Tolls, fascist sympathizers were tortured and thrown from the cliffs we see here. But those days are behind us, and now with a modest population of 35,000, Ronda is the fastest growing city in Andalusia. This growth is fueled primarily by the thriving tourism economy, which is built largely by the city's reputation as the birthplace of modern bullfighting. Pedro Romero, perhaps the most famous matador in history, hailed from Ronda, and his father is attributed with being the first to engage bulls on his own 2 feet and not on horseback. Legend has it that Pedro himself killed almost 6,000 bulls in this manner. Here we see the Plaza de Toros de Ronda, the oldest bullfighting ring in Spain, where once a year in September, residents and tourists flock to witness the Corrida Goyescar, a display of traditional 18th century bullfighting. "30 kilometers northwest, through the mountainous Andalusian countryside, is the province of Cadiz. This attractive man-made reservoir sits at the feet of the spectacular town Zahara. Overlooking a long valley between Ronda and Seville, the town of Zahara grew up around the Moorish castle built on the hilltop we see here. Because of its strategic location, the Muslims and Christians battled for control of the site until 1407, when it fell into Christian hands permanently. Zahara is one of the Pueblos Blancos, or white towns, named for the whitewashed buildings which cover the mountainside. It has a small, permanent population of about 1,600, and although there is no real industry to speak of, there are still some old stone olive oil presses in use. During the famous Fiesta de Corpus Christi, held here every year, the residents dress their houses in plant life, so the whole town blends into the natural surroundings. When British travel writer Richard Ford saw this spectacle, he dubbed the town a Moorish eagle's nest, and the title has stuck. On our way to the next location, we pass over endless rows of olive plantations, the crop so central to southern Spain's identity and culture. Olive trees grow best on limestone cliffs and in dry, tough, craggy soil, which, as you can see, Andalusia has in abundance. And overlooking these fields, we arrive at the castle of Almodovar. Built in 750 AD by Muslim Arabs, this massive medieval fortress is another example of the significant impact the Moors had on this region's landscape and culture. The structure is situated on a hillside beside the city of Almodovar, and for hundreds of years defended the Guadalquivir River below. Then in 1240 the castle was taken by Ferdinand III and came under Christian rule. It then served as a place of residence for a number of Spanish kings, as well as a treasury and dungeon. The spectacular preservation of the structure can be attributed to the Earl of Torralva, who oversaw renovation projects from 1903 to the beginning of the Spanish Civil War in 1936. These days, visitors have free rein of the castle and its 9 massive towers, and can even attend an historical recreation of a knight's banquet. 25 kilometers to the east, and we approach Cordoba. Believed by some historians to be the most populous city in the world in the 10th and 11th centuries, Cordoba was a regional powerhouse for over 1,000 years. It was expanded as a Roman colony in the 1st century BC, and was passed back and forth between powers until coming firmly under Arab-Muslim control in 716 AD. For the next 300 years, the city prospered economically, politically, and culturally. With over 3,000 mosques, massive palaces, public spaces, and the largest library in the world at the time, some historians estimate a population of 1 million at its height. Indeed, the city rivaled Byzantium and Baghdad in science, culture, and the arts, and rumours of its greatness spread throughout the civilized world. And no structure symbolizes the city's great ascension and diverse identity more than the Grand Mosque. The building was originally constructed as a church in 600 AD by the Visigoths who had settled in the area. Muslims then bought half the church in the early 8th century and subsequently spent 2 centuries refashioning it as the mosque we see today. It remained in the Caliphate's hands for 300 years until Ferdinand III took Cordoba as part of the Spanish reconquest in the mid-13th century. It was during this time and after that many Christian features were added. A central cathedral was built in the middle of the structure, and the minaret was converted into a bell tower. Now the area around the Grand Mosque and the structure itself has been deemed a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And this is the popular open-air Plaza de la Corredera. Once used as a site for gladiatorial matches, bullfights, and Spanish Inquisition displays of torture, now the plaza's uses are much tamer: rock concerts, fruit markets, and a lively flea market on Saturdays. This magnificent structure, the Alcázar de los Reyes Cristianos, or the Palace of the Christian Monarchs, has a central place in Spanish and world law. It served as the seat of the Spanish Inquisition for 300 years, with the underground Arab baths converted into torture chambers. And on a lighter note, it is where Ferdinand and Isabella first met Christopher Columbus and commissioned him for his trip to the New World. South of the main castle walls are the Alcázar Gardens. The garden's pools, terraces, and cooling fountains display its Islamic origins, and the people of Cordoba often retreat to these cool gardens on hot summer days. Cypresses and palms line the walkways, and orange and lemon trees add a fragrance to the air. The construction of the gardens coincided with the completion of a nearby aqueduct and water wheel in the Guadalquivir River, which fed the various water features you see here. The garden was enjoyed by the Christian kings as well as the Muslims before them, and has been well tended and loved for over 1,000 years. Leaving Cordoba, we pass over olive country once again on our way southward to Espinal. The small village of roughly 4,000 rises out of a mass of olive groves like a long white ship upon the ocean. The watchtower of the ship being the castle, which was built in the 14th century and is now the private residence of the Duchess of Osuna. The village was given the status of a Roman colony by Julius Caesar after the residents assisted in the emperor's campaign against Pompey. Like most of Andalusia, Espinal was a Moorish settlement before it was completely deserted during Ferdinand's reconquest of Spain. Pay Arias de Castro is attributed with constructing the castle and repopulating the city around the year 1300. As can be imagined, the main source of income for the locals is the olive trade. For kilometres in every direction, there is nothing but olives, olives, and more olives. Finally, we come over a ridge and the olive groves give way to the imposing limestone cliffs of the Sierra Subeticus Natural Park. And somewhere among these cliffs is the Cueva Macielga, or the Bat Cave, where Neolithic paintings and other prehistoric human traces have been discovered by archaeologists in modern times. Again, we drift over the olive groves and descend on the town of Montefrio, our first stop in the province of Granada. The town rises over 800 metres above sea level on a wedge-shaped cliff between two ridges, under the protection of what once was a Moorish fortress. Archaeological remains going back 5,000 years to the Copper Age suggest that a far greater area was once inhabited. But after the Moorish conquest, the local population seeking protection moved to where we see it now. Houses were built into and around this impressive cliff as a measure against attacks from Christian armies. This Gothic church, the Castillo de la Villa, was built on the site of the Moorish fortress which guarded the town. And this dome building is the Church of the Incarnation, completed in 1802, after about 20 years of work. Designed as a perfect circle and built out of robust stone to withstand earthquakes, some contemporary critics suggested that the building's structure is more suited as an oven than a church. This church, the Church of the Covenant, was originally inhabited by Franciscan monks in the early 18th century. Since then, it has served not only as a church, but also a tenement house, city hall, and more recently, a bakery. Leaving peaceful Montefrio, we pass over more dry, rolling hills southeastward and deeper into the province of Granada. And again, vast olive plantations stretch out beneath us, until we come to the foot of the Sierra Nevada range and to the capital of this province, Granada. Established on the confluence of three rivers under the Sierra Nevada range, Granada has been settled by various peoples for thousands of years. Native Spanish, Jews, Phoenicians and Romans have all been in control of the area. But it was the Moors, with their unique architecture, religion and penchant towards establishing well-fortified settlements, that really has given Granada its physical identity and modern appeal. Indeed, the city has a special place for Muslims, as it was the last city of Islamic Spain to fall to Ferdinand in 1492. And with new waves of North African immigrants coming to the city in recent years, the city is enjoying a revival of Islamic culture. This is Granada Cathedral, built during the Spanish Renaissance in the early 16th century. The structure was designed in fits and starts by a number of architects and sculptors, so a variety of styles can be seen in the construction, including Gothic, Baroque, and Classical Renaissance. And at the apex of the city sits the emblematic jewel of Granada, and perhaps the most visited monument in Spain, the Alhambra. Described by one 13th century Moorish poet as a pearl set in emeralds, in reference to the light-coloured buildings nestled amongst green forests, the Alhambra served as a palace, citadel, fortress, and enclosed city for sultans and court officials in its heyday. At the front end of the complex is the Alcazaba, translated simply as fortress. Built in the 9th century, this was the original structure on this site. It is perched on the highest point of Sabika Hill and consists of a detailed and highly fortified system of walls and 3 massive dominating towers. The largest, and by far the most prominent, is the foremost tower, the Torre de Vela, or the Watchtower. The large bell at the front of the tower is rung by young girls to aid in their search of a husband and to ward off a life of spinsterhood. And within the walls of the Alhambra complex, we're looking down at the palace of Charles V. After the Christian conquest of Granada, members of the Spanish royalty took up full or part-time residence within the Alhambra. But Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor at the time, decided he needed a palace befitting a monarch as powerful as he. "17 meters high, with a circular courtyard that we're gazing down into now, the building was considered avant-garde for its time, designed as it was in the burgeoning Mannerist style of the early Spanish Renaissance. Some art historians claim that such a style had no precedent before this palace was built. Adjoining the palace is the Court of the Myrtles, named as such because of the dense rows of myrtle bushes that line the rectangular pool. In Hispano-Muslim houses, the courtyard is vitally important. It is the area around which all other rooms are placed and is an indicator of the wealth of the family. The most important element in any courtyard are the pools, fountains, and water features, which play a central role in the design. To the east of Sabika Hill is the Generalife, perched on the Hill of the Sun and separated from the Alhambra by a small ravine. If the Alhambra was built primarily for defensive and official governing purposes, the Generalife was conceived and constructed only with pleasure in mind. Unlike its neighbour, the buildings here are markedly simple, lending a peaceful air to the architecture. Today, these, together with the Moorish gardens, comprise a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The word Generalife is most commonly translated as the architect's garden, and the title is fitting. Designed as a rural villa and a place of rest for Muslim royalty in the early 1300s, the grounds are resplendent with decorative gardens, fruit and vegetable patches, promenades and shaded alcoves, and the walkways are lined with cypress and walnut trees. The interplay of water with the sunlight and surrounding landscape are essential elements of these Moorish gardens. We have seen that Andalusia, and Granada in particular, has witnessed much religious strife, warfare, invasion and occupation over the centuries. Yet the gardens in the Generalife and magnificent feats of architecture, like the Alhambra, have been preserved and respected by Christian and Muslims alike, and are now appreciated by people of different religions and cultures from all over the globe. The history of Andalusia is certainly one of stark cultural contrasts and conflict, but the legacy that has shaped the landscape and the Andalusian people themselves is a testament to the hope that perhaps there are certain ideas and achievements that are able to bring down the barriers we erect between each other. This is the real story of Andalusia, and a great place to end this journey.